Hi. Hi, everybody. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe. There's a notifications bell down at the corner that'll let you know as to when I'm going live. So I have a lot to talk about today. And the thing is I want to talk about a little bit about how the system works, and maybe some of the flaws within that, but also some understanding. So, mm, and I'm going to be coughing it up, so everybody's going to have to kind of deal with that. I mean, unless you don't want to watch. So first and foremost, I have a couple of things pulled up that I'm going to be reading. But first and foremost, if you are in a situation in which you need help, you must ask for it. Hi, Tony. Oh, hi, Manuel. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I love the color. Um, so, you, so you must be able to at least ask for help. The understanding that you need help and being able to reach out allows for that help to be received much sooner. So if you don't ask for help, it is really left up to outreaches and people personally to try and guess what your needs are. And that doesn't usually work out real well. Not on a personal level, not on a health basis. But I do think it's very hard for people to know who to ask for help, when to ask for help. So um, I'm going to talk about displacement and some of the things that go along with the assistance of such. First and foremost, I hear a lot of people saying, well, I'm almost homeless or I'm this. There are programs to help you. But when we look at what unhoused means, there really is a definition. And I want to read through that for just a moment. And this is HUD's definition as of the new rule of April 30th, 2019. And here is the thing. This is just like in humanitarian missions, there is a triage system. So that means those who are the most in need get the most help, or help as soon as possible. So it would almost be like, if you look at it from a medical aspect, of you're in an emergency room and they're triaging people, and you have a broken leg, which is really serious, but somebody rolls in with a heart attack. Even though your situation is serious and you're like, hey, I got a broken leg, that person with a heart attack, if they don't get immediate assistance, they will die. And that is why we go off of a triage type system. Hi, Suzanne. So I will say chronically homeless will usually receive the help first. And well, let me back up. First is usually natural disasters, because there's different roles. Those who lose their housing due to natural disasters and things like that have different assistance levels, and the assistance comes from different places. But many times in those disasters, those people will become chronically homeless due to the trauma, due to the events, due to not being able to have an environment where it's possible to pick themselves back up. So just know that there are different definitions and different kinds of homelessness. But we're going to talk about the HUD's definition today. So we're going to talk about chronically homeless means a homeless individual with a disability as defined in the McKinney-Vento Homelessness Act. And this is what that means. An individual who can be diagnosed with one or more of the following conditions: substance abuse disorder, serious mental illness, developmental disability, post-traumatic stress disorder, cognitive impairments resulting from a brain injury, or chronic physical illness or disability. And I will tell you now that those things must be diagnosed. Um, I was considered chronically homeless. Hi, CBT. I'm doing good. Um, and that is because I have chronic physical ailments. I have serious mental illness, um, brain injuries that causes some cognitive issues, post-traumatic stress. So we're going to go into if they also a number two, if those people with those what I just read off, okay, if they live in a place, they're considered chronically homeless, not just because they have these things, okay? Not that's not what that is. It is after that, if they live in a place not meant for human habitation, a safe haven, or in an emergency shelter. Let me get into what that means. Somebody who is sleeping on the street or in a park or in a shelter or in sometimes a vehicle, that does not include RVs. Um, that is a different uh, demographic, and people are trying to get things changed now. Living in a tent under a bridge, I did not live in a place suitable for human habitation, and there really was no place to be in a tent other than the middle of nowhere where it is beautiful, but there are zero services and you can ask for help from the trees all day long and they will provide you with oxygen, but they are not going to help you with the things that you need to do to overcome, the to become housed. So, number three, has been homeless and living as described, with those conditions continuously for at least 12 months, 1 year, or on four separate occasions in the last 3 years, where each homeless occasion was at least 15 days. And those combined occasions equal at least 12 months. Or stays in an institutional care facility for fewer than 90 days, it will not constitute a break in homelessness, but they are included in the 12-month total, as long as the individual was living or residing in a place not meant for human habitation before that. Now, next, an individual who has been residing in institutional care facility, including a jail, health treatment facility, hospital, or other facility for fewer than 90 days and met all of the criteria in paragraph 1 of this definition before entering that facility. In other words, they have to have everything, anything in that first paragraph, and have been in a treatment facility and homeless before that. And if they meet those criteria and a family with an adult head of the household, and if there is no adult in the family, a minor head of household who meets all of the criteria in paragraph 1 or 2 of this definition, and that was being homeless for 12 months or not residing in a place not fit for human habitation, and with one of the listed definitions, such as physical disability, cognitive disabilities, hi, Lasai, all of those things. And that right there is the definition of what is homeless right now. Now, we know that many, many people fall outside of that scope. And I'm going to take you through how it kind of works, okay? So, first and foremost, before receiving any help, you have to ask for it. You have to actively seek help. For example, I'm just going to use I'm going to use a lot of my own experiences for this. For example, when I found myself on the street in Seattle, I knew already that I had brain injuries. And the first thing that needed to happen was I had to get a healthy head. I could not be physically healthy. I could not live in this environment without trying to get my head straight. So my first stop on the second day I was there was to Brain Injury Alliance of Washington. And I walked right in those doors and said, I have brain injuries. I don't know what to do, and I'm homeless. I need help. And they were a little unsure of, so, we gathered the records from the other medical, like when I had the brain injuries and stuff. And first and foremost, we had to make a primary care appointment. In other words, make sure that I had my medications that I needed and that I had a doctor. And so from there, we went to the only place that we could find where I could be seen quickly, and that was public health on Third. And if you are unhoused, they will. Well, CBT, we're gonna talk about that actually, and we're gonna talk about the reasons for that as well, because the system is definitely flawed and it needs to be updated a lot, but there is reasons for the way it works the way it does, and we're gonna kind of talk about that. So we had to get primary care. And so if you were homeless, they'd see you same day. So we went in and I made that my primary care provider. And that primary care provider, through listening to my medical history, and the advocate came with me from Brain Injury Alliance. And because she was with me, we already, we had document, because I had asked for help and actively sought help. So she got me the specialists that I needed, got my referrals under order. And, I gave my advocate a hug and she went to wherever and I went back to my tent. After that, I would say it was on me to keep my appointments, which it definitely was. And I had a lot of problems with that. It was efforts by the people that I lived in the community with, my street community, to sometimes hold my hand to get to those appointments, to make my coffee sometimes for me to get to those appointments. And all of those things were necessary. I needed help. And all of those things added up into me getting help. But the first thing I learned was that I had to be in the system. While I was in a tent, I had to get access to food and I had to get access to medical care. And so I applied for SNAP, which is food assistance, and I applied for Medicaid and was approved for both of those. And that was really a lifesaver. But that was the start, because in the way it works is there are income guidelines. And those income guidelines tell us who is the most impoverished. And that can get really frustrating for people who are struggling very hard and working and then are above those requirements. And I look at that as in the viewpoint of one time I came back to camp and was in tears. I was yelling, why do I have to be an addict to get help first? Why do I have to be dying before somebody will help me? And I realize now the reason for that is because so many people are dying. And I wasn't dying yet. And yes, the person with the heart attack is going to be taken first. And that is right. And that is just. And that is the way that we should do it. Because we can't let those with heart attacks sit out while we take those that are less able. That's okay, CBT. Sheila, it's nice to see you. I love you. I am feeling a little better. I still have swollen lymph nodes, but we're going to get it worked out. We'll get it figured out as to what's going on, and just keeping the swelling down. And I had a beautiful day of outreach yesterday, and I got some good rest. Sleep is so important. Yeah, exactly. That's the definition of triage. And from a humanitarian perspective, that's exactly what you do globally when they go out. They grab people and they grab by need. You're going to take the person who is on fire and put that fire out before you tend to the person that is able to stand. It doesn't mean that that person who's able to stand is not going to be in critical need. It just means that the it's an assessment of the situation. And the reason I kind of go back to that when I look at, people who are in need, who, are turned away, is that the perspective they have to look at is that when you look at the millions of people that do have aid, is that those are the ones on fire. We are doing our best to get to you as well. Um, so that's where that's at. And so it was very hard to understand because you know, I I was like, man, but I'm in a tent and I'm under a bridge, and then I had to realize just the deep after seeing and after living it and after being there, after truly just living it, how absolutely grateful that I could be for a tent. How absolutely grateful I could be to be well enough in body to haul firewood. How grateful I absolutely was to have people that loved me and cared about me and I cared about them in my encampment. Those things, sparking that gratitude, knowing that there were people who were not in mind or body able to live at least the way I was. And it wasn't great, but I wasn't the worst. Thank you, Manuel. That's it. The thing is positive. It doesn't mean positivity doesn't mean you're positive in every situation. It means that at some point, looking around and being like, I can make this work. I can do this. I can do this. And being grateful for that ability and knowing and seeing what can happen if I didn't have that ability. And that right there is frightening. To be actively involved and know what it could be like if I had been sicker, if I hadn't been able to do that, if I hadn't been able to be on my medications. That was frightening. And so it sparked this deep gratitude for. I remember getting the tent heater and I cried. I bawled like a baby getting a tent heater. Heat? Are you kidding me? In that cold world? Oh, that was luxury of all luxuries, you know. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. CBT triage is definitely, it's a healthcare perspective, absolutely. And that's why I go back to that, is because when we look at programs like, even like our continuum of care, and that makes sure that everybody has what they, but even that is a triage program. And even that, if we have to come to the understanding that the basis of everything we talk about is healthcare. And to know that and really understand, you know I don't think I was ever as grateful as, well, it's just bipolar or as just arthritis. It could be so much worse. And I don't believe in thinking like that. I always hated it when people are like, oh, you're in a tent. Well, it could be. Because don't point that out to me. I'll figure it out on my own. But people, they have no right to do that to people. It's a personal thing. The gratitude is ultra personal. And what people decide is going to have them hang on and be grateful for. That's really intense and a very, very deep personal issue. Um, Suzanne, does not having water and electricity make a place uninhabitable? Um, Yeah, it can. It can. It doesn't always, but it can. Um, it really depends on the area you're in. Um, there are people who live in cabins and things like that, that don't have electricity and don't have running water. I think running water is, if you don't have water, no, you should definitely. It is uninhabitable. The basis of all species health, period, end of story, is food, water, and shelter. And shelter means habitable shelter. You know, it's a shelter that is specific to that being's needs. And as human beings, to be healthy in our society, we need those things. It's a need. It's a need just to be able to get ahead, or get to the point where you are a healthy individual. You can't start from a basis of being unhealthy and just figure out how to get healthy. It's a process. um Megan, I'm going to address people shouldn't tell someone what to be grateful for any more than they should tell someone whom to be affectionate toward. I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. um because it's wrong. It's just wrong. It's you know my my quest for gratitude may not be the same as other people's, and it shouldn't be. My life is my own. There are different experiences, there are different things. I have my own perceptions. Yeah, and it's up to the individual to decide. I will say right now, one of the things that I'm still in awe over is cleaning my house. I absolutely love cleaning it because I remember that to be one of the most absolutely, it was probably something that I cried some of the most over, was not being able to have a clean environment. And no matter how much I swept the floor of the tent, the dust would not come up. And shaking out it was unreal that it just would nothing would come clean. It didn't matter. And I think, for those of you that watched the Invisible People interview with me, you saw a little of that when I said you just can't throw roses over it. And I got really emotional because, like, you can't, and that's a big thing. So now it doesn't, I'm vacuuming like I'm gonna live in a clean place. you know it's great. um but when we talk about, okay, back to definitions and things like that. So what I like to do when I'm reaching out and I'm looking for resources for people is, the first question I want to ask is, what services do you have? Because that we need to know, so that we can send that person to what they need. If I tell someone, okay, well, you know what you should do? You should go get food stamps and Medicaid. So go do that. And I happily skip off. That person probably already has that. Maybe they don't know the next step, because everything's very, not every place does everything. It's not one stop shopping. It is hitting doors and figuring it out and talking to people and listening and asking for referrals. It's insane. It really is. And that's part of the problem, is that it is extremely hard and may feel very hopeless to those who cannot find an organization or help in their area. Thank you, Sheila. I do feel it. I feel it deeply. Um, and just simple things like, behind me, being able to paint. I did a new painting, and it just filled me with joy. But I have to say, I was able to draw and paint out there, and that also brought me joy. Um, so, there's once we ask what resources they have, it's easier to determine, okay, A, have you signed up with the coordinated entry system? Okay, Suzanne, I am in Puerto Rico in the city. I have high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, and arthritis. Okay, you need health care for sure. It sounds like if you and you live in an apartment, okay, then you would be considered in our system definitely in need of assistance, but you wouldn't be getting homeless services. You wouldn't be getting displacement services until the apartment was deemed uninhabitable, usually by a housing inspector. And if it is deemed uninhabitable, then you are living in a place that's unsuitable for human habitation. And then you would qualify for services that are offered to people who are being displaced. Um, and so that's kind of how that works. And we have a thing called coordinated entry system. And what that is it's kind of it's almost like the ACEs, adverse childhood experience study, and that test. Um, yeah, Sheila, to point out every people are able to help and educate each other. Absolutely, absolutely. It's that is, outreach. The tenet of outreach is always, you know, a lot of it though is, and I'll get into that later. CBT, your painting looks amazing. It was colors of Halloween, my favorite. Oh, thank you. I always think of it as colors of fire, and I love fire. Um, and communication is vital. It is. And when we look at the unhoused community, when we're just talking about displacement, we are talking about people who literally are usually in a street, tent, shelter, a vehicle. At this juncture, I don't believe RVs count because they are considered habitable for human, even though they should count, because that's a whole nother issue, is that a lot of these RVs are not habitable for human habit, or they are not habitable, and a lot of times the people that have to live in them don't have the necessities that they need to even drive them or move them when necessary. And that's definitely an issue. Um, so when we look at so we ask them, okay, have you gone into the coordinated entry system? And that kind of rates, that's a rate of need. Okay. So if you go in there and it's really trauma informed. So it asks a bunch of questions and you get a score based on that. And whoever has the highest score is number one on the list, and it goes down from there. And they're very personal, pointed questions. But again, there's a reason for that. And a lot of people have a problem answering those questions when you're already feeling shamed and you're already feeling discriminated against and you're already having to throw every shred of pride you have into the grinder. It's difficult to answer those questions. I'm going to thank you for the hair color, you guys. I really do like it too. I think it's really pretty. Um, yeah. Picking people up is essential. And so back to what I was talking about with the displacement, is it's really need based. You have to go into the coordinated entry system. After you do that, then hopefully you are involved in healthcare and have a social worker, because at this point you need to start finding programs that you fit in with, that are your demographic. And that's where we do try to refer people to shelters, to outreaches that do specifically that, because to keep track of all of that on your own is very, very difficult. And when you're in a situation where you have no phone service, or you have no bus fare, or you're disabled, or any number of reasons that these are significant barriers to finding housing. Um, CBT, how long did it take for me to find housing and finally get the assistance to for both your health issues and home placement? Um, first, okay. First, I went to Montana and I had help getting my health issues taken care of because I was in a very, very bad spot healthcare wise. I was having trouble communicating. I was having trouble. Yeah, I was having trouble all around. I was a very, very sick individual. And he immediately helped me, even though I couldn't stay with him. He helped me file for disability, get in to see a neurologist, and make sure that the main problem, which was my rheumatology and neurology, were taken care of. After I stabilized, because that's the whole key to everything, you have to stabilize. Um, I found myself staying with my half sister, and that did not turn out well. Very, very different viewpoints. And with somebody who has or is struggling with frontal lobe injuries, there is an issue of being able to handle stressful situations. And just, it doesn't matter. Like if you live with somebody else and you're in a situation like that, you are homeless. And as it was pointed out to me, keep my opinions to myself because it's not my home. And that's exactly it right there. People need a space to where they feel themselves in a healthy way. Um, Megan, definitely. Remember that live stream you did at the shelter and the woman at desk was asking a ton of personal questions right out in public. Yeah, absolutely. You have to drop, to get help, you have to drop all pride. Pride aside, you have to ask for help. Um, so I was getting that treatment. Then I decided I needed to go to Seattle. I came to Seattle, but one of the reasons I wanted to come to Seattle, and this was first and foremost in my mind, I had this friend that her ex-husband beat her in the head like 8 times with a baseball bat or something like that. There was like brain matter. And she went to Harborview and they were literally saved her life. And she's definitely not fine or okay. I mean, but she was back at home and functioning. And I always thought to myself, if anybody knows about brain injury treatment and I can go anywhere, I'm going there. I need to save my life because I'm going to end up dead if not. And so I knew that, and being stabilized, I knew I had to get that treatment. And so my first thing was healthcare. And they were awesome with healthcare. They immediately, I was into Medicaid. It was right there. Everybody was just on it. But I also believe in taking charge of my own health because that was one thing that was a tenet throughout my life. And I've realized is that people are kind, they are loving, they are compassionate, and they will help if you ask. But no one's coming to save you. You have to do it. There are steps you will have to take because no one's coming to save you. And that was something that went through my mind all the time. People will help, things can help, but no one's coming to save me. I have to do this. And that meant going to my medical appointments when necessary. And sometimes I remember there were times where it was like 5 or 6 times a week. And then I would be spanging, panhandling, and people would be like, you look fine, you should work. And I'm like thinking to myself, I don't even know how I would manage that. I would become sick again if I even tried, not to mention a liability to them. Um, but I would say healthcare. And then what happened was I had this amazing social worker through neuro rehab, and she just was phenomenal and she was on it. And she understood the cognitive issues that I had through my brain injury and how they express themselves, and was able to highlight that and enter in her help when necessary and help me fill out applications for apartments. I was on waiting lists that went for 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years. And then and this was all over a period. I was, doing this, living in a tent, everything for a year and a half. And it finally came about where there was a spot that opened up in permanent supportive housing through Plymouth Housing, and it's a federal program called Shelter Plus Care. And it is for those of us who are disabled with whatever disabilities. For myself, there's a list of them, and I have a social worker that checks up on me, and if doesn't hear me is like, hey, how you doing, is everything okay? If I miss too many doctor's appointments, I get a phone call, are you doing okay, why are you missing appointments? It is this whole care perspective, care of the whole being afterwards as well, knowing that for me to not end up in that situation again, that my health is extremely important. I always smile, thank you, hugs back. um it seemed pretty disrespectful. No one will hear you out if you don't say anything. Absolutely. I have Snap, Medicaid, and an Obama phone. Okay, that's actually Lifeline, but yeah, I am getting glasses. I'm 62. Well, good. That's what we, those are the programs that lift people up. Those are the programs that hopefully what they're meant to do is stem the flow of trauma and stop the flow of trauma, especially poverty based trauma, because there is a lot of that. And so, yeah, you absolutely have to, you don't have to seek help. You don't have to do it that way. But I will say that for the people who are completely unable to get to what they need to do or have any sort of assistance getting there, they will be the ones that are longer on the streets, for sure. So that's kind of where we're at with that. There are, what hits my heart right now is when we see the hurricanes and we see the natural disasters, and knowing for a fact that there are going to be many people who are not going to fit that HUD definition and are absolutely homeless. And when we talk about the numbers of the counts, and we say 554,000 in the United States, we know that number is much, much higher. We know that it's unacceptable to have people living in medieval conditions. It's not okay. But on the other side, we have to have some sort of area where people can come and ask for help, because it isn't enough and it doesn't do enough to have every single person trying to check people to see, or get the help. There really does have to be a triage system. And we have to understand that within that triage system, that means having the resources to do that. And that's where communities come in. That's where all these organizations come in. On the other side, there is amazing organizations. And it always blows my mind when not somebody, when people, because I hear it over and over and over, and they're like, why isn't anybody doing something about, and then it'll be A, B, C, D, whatever the thing is. And you have to say, that's the thing. There are people doing that. There are people starting that. There are people, but we have to engage. We need to engage our communities, engage others, engage people on social media. Let them know that there are amazing things going on and that there are reasons for hope. There are reasons to believe, and we are coming so far. We have a long way to go, and the pace sometimes can seem like a snail's pace. But as of like yesterday, and I know many of you follow me on Instagram, so you'll already know that yesterday I went out, and of course, with harm reduction, and was able to bring harm reduction supplies, sandwiches, clothing, some clothing that I had, a pair of shoes, and my camera. And I look at And I'm just so blessed. I am so blessed and so humbled to have this amazing group of people that I work with that just sometimes hit home the hope that we have and the work that's being done and the compassion and the beauty and the flat out just amazingness of the light coming through these people. And I am so grateful for being able to be a part of that and support that and really be making differences in my way as well. Um, so so hi there, Amanda. This is David and very renowned. Hi, David. CBT. Do you think, Amanda, there's too many flaws in the triage system? No. I don't think there's flaws in the triage system. I think that that's completely appropriate. What I think there are flaws in is when we have a triage system and we have very serious, because the triage system is right. The problem is that, say, for example, if we go back to the other analogy, the heart attack and the broken leg, that person with a broken leg still needs help. And so we have to make sure that even in the triage system that we are using that, but we have enough help for everybody, because those broken legs still need to be treated. That cold still needs to be treated. The heart attack can be treated first, but it all needs to be treated. And I think it's not a flaw within the triage system. It's definitely a flaw within the system, though, because we have a very popular concept instead of a being based, you know, a being centered viewpoint to demographic viewpoint of if somebody identifies with a community, say that's veterans. You see it a lot coming up on social media. Well, how come we don't help the veterans? Well, we do. We do. Well, what about the children? Them too. Well, what about the disabled? Well, we do. But the problem is, again, is that when we do these demographically shifting funding and policies, we are making it a merit-based system. And we cannot have human rights become merit-based. Just the same as when people say things like, well, I worked. Well, it's great that you had the support system enough to be able to know, A, what you could do for work, how to obtain employment and keep it, because nobody does these. We don't just come up with these things on our own. We are taught these things. We're taught these things from our environment. We have personality traits that make it easier for us. There are many, many things that lead us to where we are at. And I think that we need to implement a system that meets people where they are at. Meet somebody where they are. If you meet someone and they're not a child and they're not a domestic abuse survivor and they didn't have adverse childhood experiences and they didn't fight in a war and they weren't, whatever, they still are deserving of basic human rights. That is what I don't agree with demographically based systems so much, but I agree with triage based systems. But the triage based system has to be blind to everything except the level of need for rights, or not rights. Yeah, human rights. Yes, need based human rights. And all of it, every single bit of it comes down to the human right of healthcare. Healthcare. And that's for any species. Take the environment away destroy a hummingbird's environment, and you will have a lot of dead hummingbirds. For them to be healthy, they need a healthy environment and a healthy habitat and food and water, or they will die and we are no different. Um, so, David, rather respected type O individual, associate, advocate, leader, and community of houselessness and not homeless persons. Okay, I understand, David, that homeless is not a preferred term. When we are talking about HUD definitions and we are talking about definitions within that system, the reason that we use the term homeless is because we have to talk about that in the demo in that scope. We can do, I agree with you, let's change the semantics. And I honestly preferred displaced, because anybody without a healthy habitat has been displaced from their habitat, whether that be by war or famine or political instability or any number of ways that could, natural disaster, job loss, whatever. That being has been displaced from a healthy environment. So I just really like the term displaced the best. And that's why I'm a displacement consultant, is because there are factors and there are global factors. But yeah, I totally agree with you, David. I just try not to get really hung up on that. At this juncture, what I want to get hung up on is, who cares what the definition is? Let's help people that need it and make sure that we have the resources to do so. Um, Suzanne, almost out of charge and Wi-Fi is in and out. Suzanne, you have a beautiful day. If I don't catch you before I say goodbye, sending love, and I hope you have a great day. Hi, David. Um, so I am going to get going here, and feel free, please, to ask questions. Put them in the comments. As long as it's respectful and I don't have to block you, I love answering those things, and I just think that it's so important to be engaged and really engage our communities and engage people and help understand these things, not just not just on a basic level, but on a societal level, on a public health level, on an outreach level, on a human behavior level, on a public services level, on all levels, on a healthy level. So, anyhow, I'm going to get off of here, and I wish you all the best. And if you haven't, please follow me on Instagram. And if you look in the descriptions, there is ways to help out. There is a PayPal link, and there is the Amazon wish list. Now, I have to say about the wish list, that is outreach and personal. If it doesn't have a comment that says outreach, most times it's personal. I do try to tag each one. Personal, of course, are on the lowest priority. Okay. I have everything that I need. I have housing and I have food and a lot of what I want. So really, in all honesty, the outreach stuff is a necessity, and that is what is needed the most. But it's on there, and it has what's needed underneath. Um, Bye, Megan. And oh, thank you, CBT. I just, each of you that show up for this, and I just appreciate you all so much. I really do. Um, Not only do I grow and understand by doing the work I do, I understand and grow more from the people that I interact with, and on here as well. Is that it helps, put our knowledge to use. It's more heads are better than one, and we can spark thinking in one another that makes huge differences and ripples across. So I really appreciate every one of you as well. You guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.